with Natasha Kaplinsky.
The first American soldiers are punished for abusing Iraqi prisoners. But the general in charge points the finger at US military intelligence. Turkish police say they foiled a plot to attack world leaders at a NATO summit. The head teachers leader launches an outspoken attack on feckless parents. And rocket Ronnie O'Sullivan hits the height to become has spoken about the scandal for the first time. Brigadier General Janice Karpinski said she wasn't aware of any abuse and the prison cells in question were under military intelligence control. So far, 6 soldiers have been reprimanded and is likely to see the end of their military careers. President Bush has demanded that no one found to be involved should escape punishment. Clive Myrie reports now from Washington.
She was the only female commander in the war zone, overseeing 16 jails and hundreds of Iraqi detainees. Now Brigadier General Janice Karpinski is under investigation amid allegations prisoners were abused. On American television, sitting next to her lawyer, she said she had no idea what was going on.
When I saw the photos, I was sickened by them. I just found it unbelievable. They were despicable acts photographed.
And she made it clear others controlled the cells where the abuse took place.
It was part of Abu Ghraib prison operation, but those cell blocks, cell block 1A and 1B, and the prison was actually under the control of the Military Intelligence Command at that time.
So did military intelligence here at Abu Ghraib prison sanction the mistreatment of prisoners? One U.S. news magazine claims that humiliation of detainees was a common tactic used to make interrogations easier. At the jail today, some worried relatives of prisoners were allowed inside. This woman says she couldn't ask about how her son was being treated because the Americans were nearby. I'm scared of them, she says. My heart trembles for my son. Today, the US's top diplomat promised swift action to limit the damage to America's reputation.
The acts of a few, I trust, will not overwhelm the goodness that comes from so many of our soldiers. And I'm sure that the investigations will get to the bottom of this and make sure that any problems that exist in the prison system will be fixed, and fixed promptly.
President Bush says U.S. soldiers must be punished for shameful and appalling acts. But the damage to this country's reputation has already been done at a time when global goodwill for the occupation of Iraq is sorely needed. Clive Myrie, BBC News, Washington.
Our correspondent in Baghdad, Caroline Hawley, went to Abu Ghraib prison today. I spoke to her earlier and asked her how worried Iraqis were about the conditions inside.
Well, certainly among relatives that I met who were outside Abu Ghraib waiting for news of their family members, there was a mood of real concern. One woman said to me, "Where is the democracy here?" Now, another man, a detainee who'd just been released, said he was too frightened to talk to us because there were American soldiers present. I spoke to another detainee who was released about 10 days ago, and he was also talking about what he called torture and humiliation. He told me that his brother, who was also in jail, had been forced to strip after he failed to understand an order to sit down. I think the view among Iraqis is that the abuses inside Abu Ghraib have been widespread, maybe not as extreme in many cases as what we've seen in those pictures, but that they have been widespread. In fact, we've got one Iraqi newspaper today saying that the same forces that came to free Iraqis were now humiliating and torturing them. There have been calls for action, and I think this will have a very devastating impact on America's image in Iraq and, of course, elsewhere in the Arab world, particularly after weapons of mass destruction weren't found here. The focus shifted onto Saddam Hussein's human rights record, and people are now saying, well, the Americans are committing human rights abuses, so what did we gain from this war?
The army is following 3 separate lines of inquiry into claims that British soldiers abused prisoners in Iraq. Troops from the Queen's Lancashire Regiment are being questioned in Cyprus. Inquiries are continuing in Basra, and investigators here are studying the Daily Mirror's photographs. The paper is standing by its story despite suggestions that the photographs might show a reconstruction. David Loyne reports.
At the base of the Queen's Lancashire Regiment in Cyprus, Royal Military Police have now begun an investigation, while parallel inquiries go on in Iraq. An army statement says the pictures could be a reconstruction of an actual event. That would explain the inconsistencies. Friends of the regiment believe they're fake.
The evidence we've seen so far, looking at the photographs, there are too many inconsistencies. It can't be genuine, we believe.
Today's Daily Mirror quoted what their soldier sources said in answer to specific questions about the pictures. The guns looked like the wrong version of the SA-80, the standard British Army rifle. In the Mirror, a soldier known only as A said, "I can't explain." The truck where the alleged attack took place was not of a type in use in Iraq. Soldier A said, "It was a 4-ton truck. I'm not sure what make." He said it was the sort of truck they always used for raids. There were also questions asked about the lack of obvious dirt, sweat or injuries in the pictures. Soldier A said, "That was the way it was." But on the question of whether the soldiers' floppy hats and uniform markings were right, the Mirror has a better defence. Their other source, Soldier B, said, "We wore floppy hats all the time," and the Mirror prints pictures of Queen's Lancashire Regiment soldiers with uniform markings as shown in the disputed pictures. In a statement, the Mirror said, "Although we appreciate that the Queen's Lancashire Regiment has concerns about the Daily Mirror, we also have very serious concerns about the behaviour of some of their troops in Iraq."
Tonight, the real story behind these pictures seems, if anything, to be much less clear. But while the questions over details matter, of course, in Britain, and particularly to the regiment concerned, the damage is already done in the Arab world. And the publication of these pictures has given extremist elements in Iraq more reason to take on the occupying forces. David Loyne, BBC News, at the Ministry of Defence.
The authorities in Turkey claim that they foiled a plot to launch bomb attacks against next month's NATO summit in Istanbul. After raids this morning, 9 men were charged with belonging to a terrorist organisation with links to Al-Qaeda. 50 heads of state, including President Bush and Tony Blair, are due to attend the summit. Emma-Jane Kirby has more.
Suspected Islamic militants arrested by Turkish police in the northwestern province of Bursa. The 16 men are accused of planning a bomb attack on next month's NATO summit. Police have already charged 9 men. They say the detainees had been working on the plot for more than a year. A search of the suspects' homes revealed a cache of weapons and bomb-making equipment. Officers seized guns, explosives, chemicals and sophisticated computer equipment. The head of intelligence in Bursa, where the arrests were made, said the suspects had made remote-controlled and time-activated devices which were ready to use. It was clear their target was those attending the NATO summit in June. CDs and videos featuring Osama bin Laden were also found. The men are believed to belong to Ansar al-Islam, an extremist group thought to have links to Al-Qaeda. The suspects will appear in court later this week. Turkey's already tightened its security ahead of the NATO meeting, when more than 30,000 police officers and hundreds of snipers will be on duty.
NATO officials say they have every confidence in the Turkish police and have no intention of moving the venue of this summit. But coupled with last year's bomb attacks in Istanbul, this latest series of arrests will certainly prompt a feeling of disquiet. Emma-Jane Kirby, BBC News at the NATO headquarters in Brussels.
The leader of the Head Teachers Union says a growing number of parents are encouraging bad behaviour and truancy among children. David Hart told the National Association of Head Teachers Conference that poor parenting at home was leading to misbehaviour at school. James Westhead reports.
Children in Cardiff enjoying the bank holiday free from school discipline. Today it was their parents who got her ticking off. At their annual conference, the head teachers leader, David Hart, blamed parents for a rising tide of bad behaviour that he says starts in the family home.
TV or PlayStation used as free babysitters. Children glued to computers, arriving at school half asleep. Parents neglecting to ensure that homework is done. School staff are not surrogate parents.
Head teachers demanded more support from parents, a message listened to by party leaders, including the Liberal Democrats' Charles Kennedy. But parents' groups were angered by the comments.
It's disappointing to hear a head teacher union making such negative comments about parents. We accept there are a minority of parents who will always not comply with what's required, but the vast majority of parents are very good parents.
But in Cardiff Bay today, most seem to agree standards have dropped.
A lot of the children, they don't know how to sit at the table, how to eat properly, manners. I think it's back to basics.
The parents do have to take responsibility for the children. We've brought them into the world. We have to see them through.
The vast majority of parents are supportive, say head teachers, but today's comments are a warning that while the government's asking schools to do more and more, it can't expect them to solve all society's problems. James Westhead, BBC News in Cardiff.
The founder of LastMinute.com, Martha Lane Fox, has been seriously injured in a road accident in Morocco. The 30-year-old internet entrepreneur had undergone emergency surgery after being taken to hospital with suspected hemorrhaging. Ms. Lane Fox had been on holiday with friends. Health ministers say a new care scheme for older people could reduce hospital admissions. Specialist nurses treat the elderly in the community before problems become serious. The Evercare project is being piloted in 8 areas of England. The Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has said that he's ready to scale back plans to pull out troops and Jewish settlers from the Gaza Strip after his own Likud party rejected the idea. Despite the setback, Mr. Sharon has said that he has no intention of resigning. From Jerusalem, Orla Gowan reports.
Weakened and humiliated, Ariel Sharon coming today to face the enemy within, the members of his own party who delivered such a crushing defeat. He talked of his sorrow at last night's vote. He's now saying he'll change his plan, but not saying how much he'll water it down. The scale of the victory by the Gaza settlers sending Sharon back to the drawing board. A small group of hardliners outmaneuvered their own Prime Minister and embarrassed President Bush, who'd already endorsed the pullout.
I am happy for Israel that finally the people with common sense voted to keep the land of Israel intact.
Flush with success today, the settlers laying foundations for new houses in Gaza. They've won this round of the battle. They'll stay on occupied land in defiance of international law. Sharon now prisoner of the settlers he nurtured. Israel's opposition leader calling for elections, reluctant to throw Sharon a lifeline by joining his government.
What for? He doesn't have a mandate in his own party. He cannot deliver.
So you're saying no to joining his government?
First of all, we were on Tofel, but joining the government is not the ideology of our party.
Tonight, Ariel Sharon's facing a crisis and looking for a way out. He knows the majority of ordinary Israelis want to leave Gaza. He could call a referendum, but that will take time. For now, he and his plan are in limbo. Orla Gowan, BBC News, Jerusalem.
To the sport now, and Ronnie O'Sullivan has won the Embassy World Snooker title for the 2nd time, and with it a cheque for £250,000. He comfortably beat Graham Dott by 18 frames to 8 in the final at Sheffield's Crucible Theatre.
Ronnie O'Sullivan.
They call him the Rocket. Today, Ronnie O'Sullivan needed to be little more than a sparkler to take his 2nd world title. His opponent's Graham Dott had surprised most by taking an early 5-0 lead. But 7-0 down overnight, this time the blue touch paper failed to ignite. O'Sullivan stamped his authority from the outset. Right-handed, left-handed, it didn't matter. Ambidextrous, his superiority was unambiguous. Dott certainly had his chances, but spells of prodigious potting were to be undermined by subsequent error. When he sent the black overboard, all sensed he was all at sea, and O'Sullivan, showing a previously unforeseen ruthlessness, was in no mood to hand out the lifebelts. Well, might his opponents not have wanted to look. It took just 2 frames of the final session for O'Sullivan to complete his triumph. Finishing just a little contemptuously left-handed, it didn't matter that the ball didn't drop. A cheque for £250,000 was in his pocket.
No, I'm just going to enjoy the moment, and who knows next season, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to enjoy it for the moment and take some time off in the summer. And if I do carry on playing, I just want to keep improving.
Which is bad news for the rest. He was the best by a considerable distance at the Crucible this year. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
That's about it. There are, of course, news bulletins every hour on BBC News 24. Now we join the BBC's news teams across the United Kingdom. Good night.
Good evening, I'm Pauline Brandt with the latest news in the south. Armed police have spent the day surrounding a house in Poole after a man threatened a number of people with what's thought to be a shotgun. Officers were called by neighbours who heard screaming children in the early hours of the morning. Tonight the siege goes on. Ben Burton reports.
The standoff continues and the residents of Haskell Road spend another day away from their homes. The gunman remains blockaded in the house. Some people are staying with friends and families or in local hotels, whilst others were less fortunate. The Kent family bedded down at the Rossmore Leisure Centre. 14-month-old Cherry seems unaware of the drama going on around her, and her father says they've been well cared for.
I think we coped as well as we can do in those type of circumstances, and the facilities that the staff laid on here in the sports centre were absolutely wonderful. They really made us as welcome as we could be.
It's actually quite scared, not for myself, but for my daughter. I was scared for her. It's because we didn't know what was going on at the time. All we saw were these police officers pacing up and down the road with dogs and guns.
Police negotiators are doing their best to end the siege as quickly as they can, but they admit they can't say when the ordeal will end.
I don't know how long before this man's going to come out. I have to say to you, we're trying to get him out, peacefully, and we're looking at various options to achieve that. But, I have to consider the safety of the public, the safety of my officers, and indeed his safety.
The mother, who escaped early yesterday morning, has returned from hospital to her 4 young children. Police say unless the gunman gives himself up, residents could be forced to spend another night away from their homes. Ben Burton, BBC South Today.
And police have issued a number for information for that siege that started yesterday morning. For local people who've been affected, the number 0800 50 60 50. That's 0800 50 60 50. It's strictly for residents in Haskell's Road and Madeline Crescent. 2 Albanian men appeared before Brighton Magistrates Court accused of murder. Altin Molita, and also an Albanian, was stabbed to death in Hove in the early hours of Saturday morning. It followed a collision involving 3 cars. Mark Sanders reports.
At the roadside where the young man died, floral tributes have been left in his memory. 23-year-old Altin Molita, an Albanian, was stabbed repeatedly just north of Palmyra Square in Hove. It followed a collision involving 3 cars just before 1:30 on Saturday morning. Sussex police launched a murder inquiry codenamed Operation Trent. Today, 2 Albanians appeared before Brighton Magistrates Court charged with murdering Altin Molita. They are 21-year-old Endrit Lazari and Flamor Tapali, who's 32. Brighton addresses were given for both men. An interpreter was in court to translate the proceedings for one of the Albanians. An application for bail was made for Flamor Tapali, but it was refused. Both he and his co-defendant were remanded in custody until May the 20th, when they'll appear at Lewes Crown Court. Detectives investigating the fatal stabbing of Altin Molita have renewed their appeal for witnesses to come forward. Mark Sanders, BBC South Today, Brighton Magistrates Court.
Health service staff and union officials are campaigning to secure the future of 3 community hospitals in North Oxfordshire. The campaigners want to save the Oxcom Hospital in Oxford, Chipping Norton Hospital and Horton Hospital in Banbury. Unison claims privatisation will strain resources. Last month, Parliament announced that 5 community hospitals in the south of the county will stay open. A look at the weather very quickly. Tomorrow, cloudy, wet and windy with strong southwesterly winds, a high of 13 Celsius. That's all from us for this evening. We're back in Breakfast News. Good night.
There is a team of professionals, police, probation officers and social workers, dedicated to safeguarding the public while achieving their ultimate aim, from sex offenders to ex-offenders. Meet the Protectors, Wednesday at 9 on BBC One.
Hello there. We've had a bit of everything weather-wise this weekend. For some of us, there was some pleasant sunshine, for some, a bit too much rain than maybe we would have liked. We've not had that much in the way of strong winds, however. It is going to turn windy over the next 24 hours. Today's rain lingered in the southeast corner through the morning, only clearing Kent during the late afternoon, followed behind by clearer skies, but following that, more rain now across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. It's weather fronts, it's quite a deep area of low pressure, and all that wet weather will be sweeping across the country through the night. So most of us turning wet and also turning windy. Gales likely for the morning rush hour, particularly across southern counties of England and Wales. Some quite nasty conditions. The combination of the gales and the heavy rain. A miserable return to work across South Wales and the West Country in particular. Poor visibility. Roads like the M4 and the M5 far from pleasant. But many other roads across the country also starting off rather wet. Some brighter skies for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland, but it won't take long before the showers get going here. And the showers tending to chase the rain away. The rain clearing from eastern England in the early afternoon, probably lingering across northern Scotland through the day. Elsewhere then, yes, there'll be some sunny spells, but also fairly frequent showers. The showers rattling in on the strong wind in the south. Lighter winds across southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England mean the showers here will be fairly slow moving, so some places in for a real soaking. The showers containing hail and thunder, and it won't feel very pleasant wherever you are. That's all from me. Have a very good night.
I really don't believe that I've done anything that ever warrants losing any of my kids. I don't want him to think that I'm the one that walked away from him and didn't love him enough to fight. I'm going to go out and give it my best shot and I'll bring him home with me.
The battle for Dylan gone. One Life continues tomorrow at 10:35 on BBC One.
There are full details of forthcoming BBC programmes and complete listings for all major free-to-air and other television channels in the new Radio Times.
Two mums, two babies, one family. The new series of Cutting It continues tomorrow at 9 on BBC One.
George Hamilton stars as a vampire who's had to move from Transylvania to New York. Comedy in our late film Love at First Bite in 40 minutes here on BBC One, right after the final part of our network premiere, Pearl Harbor.